Xiao then went over to Dao Ming's house and challenged him, waving a slipper at him for forcing himself on her. Dao Ming just replied, "If it bothers you that much, let's settle this with a fishing contest. If I win, you'll regret it." They went fishing, but oddly, they spent the whole time talking about her. Dao Ming thought she was clueless, but Xiao argued she was more beautiful than he realized. Back at school, something important went missing, and the teacher wanted them to list people they suspected, but she refused to name anyone. Confident her friends weren't thieves. She was punished that day for standing up for them, and from then on, she and Xiao became inseparable. Back at the fishing contest, Dao Ming caught a squid and made a big deal of it, while Xiao's bucket was full. When they returned to shore, they found her crying, though she claimed something just got in her eye. Xiao didn't miss a beat, boasting to her that he'd beaten Dao Ming, but Dao Ming's face suddenly turned red. Xiao laughed, saying, "Are you thinking about what happened between you two?" and chased him down to hit him, making her laugh despite her frustration at their antics. After break, back at school, she opened her locker to look for her sneakers, but they were missing. Of course, curly-head Dao Ming had taken them and tried to wear them himself, ripping them in the process. She sighed and left them, figuring she'd be wasting her energy fighting him. Her friends teased him, asking why he was so eager to show off the torn shoes. "Be patient. I'm just luring her in. When she falls in love with me, I'll dump her like the others." On the rooftop, she saw Wu Zi drawing, and she had a feeling he was sketching Jing. She noticed some chalk on his hair, and since he couldn't see where it was, she told him to lower his head so she could get it off for him. Just then, the sneaky girl who has a crush on Dao Ming was snapping photos from behind. She ran to show Dao Ming, saying, "Look at the girl who kissed you at the party. Now she's cozying up to Wu Zi." Furious, he stormed off. Meanwhile, she went back up to the roof to grab something she'd forgotten, only to find him there, carrying all his anger. He was starting to believe all the gossip. She tried to leave, but he cornered her against the wall and told her to stop playing games with him, which left her bewildered. He told her not to act innocent, punching the wall beside her. She was terrified and ran until she tripped. He grabbed her again, saying, "This is all because of you." She broke down, begging him to leave her alone, and at that moment, he started to regret his actions, apologizing and promising he wouldn't hurt her again. Since then, whenever they saw each other, they'd avoid eye contact. She was scared to see him, and he felt guilty for what he'd done. Even his friendship with Wu Zi became strained. Wu Zi's friends asked him if anything was going on between him and her, but of course, he had no response since they all knew he was in love with Jing anyway. On Jing's birthday, our girl was getting ready with her friend from school, planning to attend, and Xiao offered to drive them. They made it to the party and immediately headed to the buffet, ready to enjoy some treats, until she nearly choked on her food when she spotted Dao Ming walking toward her. Luckily, another girl came up to talk to him, giving her a moment of relief. Then Jing arrived with Wu Zi, and it was clear Wu Zi was planning to confess his love to her, just as his friends had predicted. They started dancing together, and as soon as the dance was over, he was about to confess his feelings, but Jing stopped him, saying she had something she needed to announce. She thanked everyone for coming to her birthday party, then declared she'd be giving up her position as the heir to her family's company to study law in France, where she wanted to help the poor. Her parents objected, but she apologized to them and even cut her hair on the spot to show she was serious and mature enough to make her own decisions. Seeing this, Wu Zi was heartbroken. He left the party in tears, and she ran after him to apologize, hugging him. Just then, 2 other girls came up to see him, so she returned to the party and started drinking heavily. Eventually, she left the party drunk, and Dao Ming saw her, initially thinking she was eavesdropping on him. She dismissed him, slurring, "Why are you pretending, you fake?" She suddenly leaned her head against him, and although he tried to push her away to avoid any misunderstandings, she ended up throwing up all over him. The next morning, she woke up confused about how she got home, but her aunt told her that Dao Ming had brought her. When she saw him at university, he asked her, "Aren't you going to say anything to me?" She acted nonchalant and replied, "You didn't apologize for what you did, so don't expect anything from me." He grabbed her by the collar and asked, "Are you happy now that Jing's leaving Wu Zi?" But the truth was, she wasn't happy at all. She went up to the rooftop to encourage Wu Zi to stop Jing from leaving if he really loved her. Sure, she was relieved at first, but seeing him downcast made her feel bad. She then spoke to Jing, urging her to reconsider. Jing, however, stood her ground, determined to pursue her dream, and left. Woozy happened to overhear this and angrily scolded her, telling her to mind her own business instead of meddling in his private matters. She tried explaining that she was only concerned for him, saying, "Don't be so petty, come on." Later, they were all at the train station, waiting to say goodbye to Jing. When Dao Ming showed up with a gift, Xiao insisted on seeing what was inside, but it turned out to be a silly prank. She thought to herself that Woozy would probably be happier if he was living freely like Xiao instead of being miserable over Jing. Dao Ming noticed her mood and asked, "Why are you so down?" She replied, "You wouldn't understand unless you've been in love with someone who's going through a tough time." When Jing arrived, everyone said their goodbyes, and right after, Woozy showed up. She got annoyed, asking him how he could come so late and miss the goodbye. Woozy, however, had taken her advice to heart and booked a seat on the next flight to France so he could see Jing again. He thanked her, giving her a quick kiss on the forehead. Xiao, who was watching, muttered to himself, "Seriously, it's just a forehead kiss. Chill out, you're acting like they're dating." As they watched the plane take off, Dao Ming tried to say something to her, but she couldn't hear over the noise of the aircraft. He didn't repeat himself and walked away. He had said, "Date me," without her realizing it. One day, Xiao received a message inviting him and our girl to play a game of bridge with them. She was nervous, knowing they'd likely lose, but Xiao seemed relaxed and confident. With some hesitation, she joined him. Dao Ming smirked and said, annoyed, she called him out, saying he was obnoxious for trying to intimidate them like that. Dao Ming spread the cards dramatically, showing off his skills as if he was some kind of joker. At first, she and Xiao were thrilled, thinking they'd won, but then Dao Ming pulled out the ace of spades and they started to worry. Xiao accidentally messed up the cards in his nervousness, secretly slipping the ace into his pocket without them noticing. Unfortunately, he got caught and she admitted defeat, asking what they wanted. Dao Ming's friends dragged Xiao off, leaving Dao Ming with her. She asked him what he wanted, and he simply pushed the table away and told her that all he wanted was for her to take him out to dinner. The next day, she went shopping with her mom, which made her late for her meeting with Dao Ming, who had been waiting for 4 hours in the rain. When she finally arrived, she asked him why he'd waited so long. As soon as he saw her, he hugged her tightly. She took him to eat at the cheapest restaurant she could find. Though he had been expecting they'd go somewhere fancy, or maybe up the tower. Every place they tried was closed. Finally, they took an elevator to go to a rooftop cafe, but the elevator was out of service, and they got stuck inside. His phone had died because he'd called her so many times, and her phone wasn't working either. They were left in silence until he fainted from a fever, which he'd gotten from waiting in the rain, and took care of him as best as she could while her family worried about her absence. The next morning, he woke up to see her sleeping beside him. She quickly stirred awake, reassuring him that he'd be fine and could go home soon where his mother would take care of him. But he shared that he hadn't seen his mother in years since she worked in London, and his father had passed away, leaving him to fend for himself. She felt sorry for him and realized why he acted out sometimes. She joked, and she said that he owed her now, which startled him. So she quickly clarified that she didn't mean it in any weird way. Just then, the maintenance workers opened the door and they were rescued. Back at university, her friends asked where she'd been all night, and then someone informed her that Dao Ming was looking for her. When he showed up, he handed her a bag, which she thought might be a gift, but it was just her jacket that she'd left behind. He draped it over her shoulders, and everyone assumed they'd spent the night together. Rumors spread that they were dating, and a girl who wanted to befriend her insisted they hang out together that night. At the nightclub, this new friend wanted to see if she'd introduce her to Dao Ming, assuming they weren't actually dating. To avoid the drama, she drank a little too much and suddenly spotted a foreign guy playing music, whom she mistook for Woozy. She sat next to him and told him she liked him. The next morning, she woke up in a strange hotel room, finding a message from the guy named Thomas, who had left early, not wanting to wake her. He left his number in case she wanted to reach out. Embarrassed, she muttered to herself about how this could ruin her reputation, then headed to university. Her professor was waiting for her, demanding to know where she'd been, but she dodged him and ran off. Just then, Thomas messaged her, telling her he was at the university, but wasn't sure where to meet her. She rushed out to find Thomas before he said anything to anyone. Just then, Dao Ming popped up and asked, "Looking for me?" She replied, "Do you think I have nothing else to do but deal with you?" He grinned and told her to sit down and eat, since she looked faint. She started eating quickly to get away, but Thomas called, saying he was near the cafeteria, so she had to get up. But Dao Ming, suspicious, asked, "Are you talking to a guy or what?" She brushed him off, saying, "Move, you're not my investigator." When she saw Thomas, she tried to clarify what happened. He reassured her that nothing happened. He just helped her since she was drunk. However, he admitted he was happy when she said she liked him last night and wanted to get to know her better. Just then, Dao Ming showed up and demanded to know, "Who is this and why are you with him?" She panicked, blurting out, "Oh, this is just my cousin. He was just looking for the restroom." But Dao Ming, still jealous, told Thomas, "I'm her boyfriend, so please back off." Surprised that she had a boyfriend, Thomas decided to leave.